Hello, my name is Steffi, and alongside Matthew, we're going to be kind of the moderators for today's SU Town Hall. Before we start the questions, we would like some opening statements from Julian and Shivali.
Is that our cue? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Julian. I am a senior now at Stuyvesant, and I'm the SU president for this year.
Hi guys, I'm Shivali. I'm a junior and I'm the vice president for the student union this year.
We don't want to make our opening statement too long because we want to delve right into the questions that you have. This is really meant to be a town hall and we really want to hear from you. As I'm sure you're all aware, we were unopposed in this election season, which is something that, we wish we were opposed and we wish we had opposition and we wish we could have gone through that process because what Shivali and I really want to bring to the SU is a completely new perspective. Revitalize things, take into account the new situation we're in this year with COVID, and turn things on their head. And that's been a priority for us as we've been developing, our campaign plan, our platform, our plan, and as we've been communicating with students. We don't want this to be another one of those SU elections where, two people who have been in the SU for a long time are unopposed, elected, and unaccountable. We want to make sure we're accountable, and we're trying to do that in every aspect of our communication with you. And so I guess I want to briefly just delve into a little bit about our philosophy and Shivali will add on, but then we really want to get to your questions and we really want to have a conversation with you to listen to all of your ideas and make sure that, we're doing everything we can in the student union this year to really represent and advocate for students. So just to give you a brief overview of our philosophy, we have these three main pillars that we really want to uphold this year, and they're inclusivity, equity, and accountability. And we have a lot of other things we care about as well, but we think these really sum up the main goals we have. Inclusivity applies on a lot of different levels. It applies within the SU. We want to make sure that the SU incorporates students from all different grades, as it always does. Freshmen, seniors, students from all different clubs, organizations, backgrounds, experiences. We want to make sure that the SU itself is diverse and inclusive. And we also want to make sure that the school and our school environment is building an inclusive space and environment where we all feel comfortable and accepted, and we all feel the ability to participate, part of which is this town hall, making sure that student voices can be heard and included in these conversations. Our second pillar is equity, and equity is something that permeates all aspects of our platform. We want to make sure that no matter what we're approaching, be it a homework policy for the school, be it an event we're hosting, like Sing, we want to make sure that we do it in an equitable way. For homework policy, that means how do we make a homework policy that works for blended and remote learners? For Sing, that means how do we make sure that all students have an equal access to an experience? What if students can't pay their Sing dues? That sort of logic. Thinking about things from the perspective of how can we include as many people as possible? How can we do things in an equitable way? And there's also specific equity-related initiatives that we have in our campaign that we'll delve into later in this town hall. Making sure that we're including culturally responsive curriculum, supporting implicit bias trainings, and a lot of other things that we'll elaborate on. And finally, our last pillar is accountability. Accountability is always something that has been really important within the SU, and I think we've gotten better and better at doing it each year. And we think since we all switched to remote learning and since we all entered this pandemic, accountability and communication has been more important than ever. Last year, with all of the changes happening so abruptly, and this summer with planning for school reopening, it was crucial that we had communication lines open to students so that there were constant email updates, social media updates, and that's something we're going to continue. We want to make sure that we have constant, frequent communication about everything, and we want to make sure that we're being held accountable by you. The first step of which is hosting this town hall and making sure that you can ask us questions, we can respond, and that you can hold us accountable. Shivali, do you want to add on?
Yeah, thank you, Julian. So obviously a big part of this year is transitioning and adapting. So a lot of our policy and a lot of our plan is focused around that, adapting to the technology issues that we know a lot of students will face in terms of equity, making sure every student has the same resources and ability to go through their school day with the things they need. So a lot of our plan addresses things like that. Textbook access, and then transferring events to being online. Just a few examples. I know Julie mentioned a lot more. But besides just adapting, we also want to include a lot of things that can kind of transcend and exist even after we come back to like normal school. So yeah, that comes a lot also with equity. We're hoping to play a bigger role in having a greater student voice, expanding the student union to having people that aren't just student union members, getting the input from non-SU, just normal students. That's really important to us. So yeah, like Julian said, I want to get to the questions and hear what you all have to say. So yeah.
Okay, so that was a great opening statement. We're going to move on to our first question, and it's going to be regarding diversity. How will you uphold diversity in the SU and in Stuyvesant?
Yeah, so am I on mute? No, okay. Sorry. So a big part for both Julian and I when choosing our executive council, which we did a few weeks ago, was making sure we were getting a representative council that could embody everything a student at Stuyvesant would kind of think about to our best ability. So we have students of different race. We have students like pretty equal distribution of genders, race, and as well as our executive council, we are planning on kind of implementing a lot of partnerships this year that we're really excited about, such as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which I don't know if you've all heard about it, but our guidance department, led by Ms. Brandon, is starting this really exciting committee with kind of introducing all like Sty Unity clubs and all student voices to this one committee and acting as sort of a equity team. And we plan on working with them a lot. And then, as I mentioned before, allowing non-SU members to implement their ideas and their opinions when it comes to policy and change. That's going to be really important to us also.
Mm-hmm. And I can elaborate on that. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do in this realm. Like one of the ones that's actually a very relevant example right now is we currently have SU director applications out that'll be due tomorrow if people want to become directors of the SU departments, be it the communications department, the event planning department, the budget department. And so what we do for these applications is we make them blind. We actually work with our IT department to set up a website that allows students to generate a random code so that when they submit their application, we don't know their name, we don't know who they are, and we judge all of these applications just on the merit of the responses so that we can make sure we have equal representation across all grades, across all students, that we can incorporate new members and not just the same members who have been in the SU across all 4 years. And so that's something that we're continuing to do this year. I think it's the third year that we've been doing blind applications. And it's something that we found really valuable. It helps us a lot to have a diverse group of students in the student union because it means we have a diverse group of perspectives, and that's the best way we can represent the students. And sort of, bouncing off of that, another thing that's really important to us is working on upholding diversity, equity, and inclusion in a lot of the different spheres that exist within our school. So for example, BSL and Aspira have been hosting amazing race roundtables for the past year and a half now. And we want to commit to attending all of those, to participating in all of those, to working closely with them, because that really matters. And that representation and being on there means a big deal. We also participate in a lot of bodies outside of the school. There are some Department of Education student voice leadership bodies. There's one for the borough called the Borough Student Advisory Council. There's one for the city called the Chancellor Student Advisory Council. And we sit on both of these bodies. And over the past few years, we've already started pursuing a lot of policies that aim to uphold diversity and equity. For example, culturally responsive sustaining education, which I guess a good example of which would be, if all of us here entered Stuyvesant and took, probably art appreciation, music appreciation, and there's a lot of other courses that this applies to as well, but those courses are sort of prime examples of how there's a lot of courses that high schoolers take that are Eurocentric. European literature, for example, literally a year devoted to European literature. And that don't include, Black, Brown, Latinx authors and ideas and perspectives in history. And that's really important, and we've been pursuing that at the citywide level, and we want to support BSL and Aspira in pursuing that at the school-wide level as well. Shivali and I actually, one of the main ways that we got to know each other and partner together in the SU is that we participate in another organization outside of the school called Students and Educators for Equity. And it's another citywide group of students who work directly within the DOE to promote student voice and equity. And we're really lucky at Stuyvesant to have a really strong student voice framework. It's one of the things that makes our student government amazing because we have developed such a voice for students. We have an $180,000 budget. We fund clubs, we run STI activities, we run Sing. Almost any other school in the country would not be capable of pulling off a production that involves, 1,000 students using, the auditorium, massive sets, props. All of that is incredible. So we have all these resources at our disposal. We have this amazing student voice network set up where we're constantly communicating with the administration, with the teachers, with the students, and that puts us in an amazing position to start working on really pursuing meaningful and purposeful equity and diversity work in Stuyvesant. And so we hope to use the platform that we have in the SU and the communication networks that we have established to really make that a priority this year.
All right, so that kind of leads into our next question, which is about how will the SU support the operations of the newly created Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee?
Yeah. So Julian and I we found out about the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee from The Spectator, and that was a few days ago, and we actually reached out to Ms. Brandon through email, and we want to set up a meeting just to discuss what her plans and what her mission is for that committee. It's really important to both Julian and I that we do show our support for them, and we do have a plan and a method to which we can work with them in the future. So yeah, we totally stand with the cause. We have wanted to create a similar committee within the SU, and so it was just great timing, I guess, to have that committee open at the same time as school. So we are planning on meeting with Ms. Brandon and Ms. Pedrick and discussing things further as to how we can work with them.
Mm-hmm. And just to add on Shivali, I think one of the things that we're really trying to work on is finding a balance. We want to, provide space for BSL and Aspiro to do their work and STI Unity to do their work, and we also want to support it ourselves. So we don't want to, defer this difficult work of, delving into the issues of systemic racism and discrimination at Stuyvesant. We don't want to just defer that to BSL and Aspiro. We want to support them in that work, but we also want to give them space to share their experiences and to do the work that they have been doing for a very long time that the SU hasn't been able to participate in before. So we want to find a balance where we're able to, collaboratively work with them and use our platform and our positions for good.
So going on to the next question, it was kind of in regards to, I would say freshman workshops. What subjects do you wish to expand on for freshman workshops, and will these workshops expand to other grades as well?
Shivali, do you want to lead that, or I can? Yeah.
I can start with it. So at the end of last year, I was part of the sexual misconduct presentations and leading that workshop. Before school ended, when we were still in the physical building, we met with me and Theo from our executive council. We met with the guidance counselors to discuss expanding that workshop. So the situations will change now that we're virtual, and we haven't been able to meet with the guidance counselors yet to discuss how we're going to transform that platform. But our hope last year was to bring that workshop across the grades and adjust the topic of the workshop based on the grades we were talking to. So as we got older in the grades, we would work with the English department to maybe step in one of their classes and talk about things like consent, healthy relationships, etc. So that's something we definitely are looking forward to and will plan on pursuing this year, but it's just a matter of how to transform that to a virtual platform and still be as effective as it was at the end of last year.
Mm-hmm. I think this is one of those areas, I think Shivali and I have really noticed this, is that there's tremendous disadvantage and lack of opportunity that comes with COVID and that comes with remote learning, but it also opens up new doors and new avenues for communication. I think we've all noticed this. There's more engagement online now that students have all sort of received devices from the DOE and have more internet access. We see more forums, we see more online events where there's more participation. We hosted, for example, movie nights last year with BSL that had a lot of student attendance, and it was really great to see. And if that had happened in person, it might not have received that same attendance. But getting back to this question of freshman workshops and how do we support freshmen as they're coming into their first year at Stuyvesant without being able to really go into the school building, meet their teachers in person, it must be tremendously difficult. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a freshman coming to Stuyvesant now. And in a normal year, it's already overwhelming. Shivali and I have talked about this before. Our experiences coming to Stuyvesant and what that was like. I mean, it's already something that's incredibly hard to deal with, and imagine having that on top of remote learning and COVID, especially now that blended learning has been pushed back. And even students who were in blended learning won't be able to come to the school building on Monday, but we'll have to wait till October 1st. And the freshman workshops originally served to educate about topics like sexual misconduct. BSL has one relating to race. And these are still incredibly important topics that need to be pursued. But there's also other areas for expansion here. And it doesn't necessarily need to be in the same format because we have these new pathways open. And I'll give you an example. I mean, we want to support freshmen in the best way possible. What that meant yesterday, for example, was there was a lot of confusion around schedules, A and B days. The phys ed and biolab, alternation, the 1 through 5 versus 6 through 10 schedule. There's been a lack of communication, a lack of clarity about that. Midday yesterday, while we were in the middle of our classes, the administration was getting overwhelmed with emails from freshmen, and we were too. And so we collaborated with the big civs to send out an email with a 2-page document that clearly and neatly explained all this information about the schedules and how to participate in school, and also included like helpful links and helpful information. That's one way that we really want to engage with freshmen, and that we really want to make sure we're supporting them. It doesn't just have to be in the form of workshops. It doesn't just have to be in the form of talks and presentations with guidance counselors. It can just be in the way that we communicate with them by email or social media. So we're trying to think of this in a COVID-related perspective with all the platforms we have available.
All right. So the next question is a little bit more broad. It's what do you think will be the biggest challenge this year to SU operations, and how do you plan to overcome that hurdle?
Yeah. So definitely a challenge that we thought about having this year, and something we're worried about and currently, trying to make sure it's not as big as a challenge as it could be, is making sure that every student at Sty has access to the same information. And the difficulty, from our eyes, would just come from the fact that social media is not necessarily accessible and used by every student. So we want to make sure that if we're posting something on Facebook, it's also going to the students through email. Or if we're emailing someone, they can look at it through Facebook or Instagram. And that is something that we have always done, and we will continue to uphold that kind of requirement. But yeah, that's definitely a challenge we could be facing this year. In addition, there's the obvious one of not being able to, see students in the hallways or talk to people in between classes. And then when it comes to SU, when we have cabinet meetings in person, you can kind of catch up with departments before we head into the meeting or before we have our official discussions. But obviously, because everything is so Zoom and online focused, you're not going to really have that casual conversation on the side. So our plan for just solving that issue would be having frequent meetings. We already do this when it comes to side activities, which we completely renovated this year and remade an entire website. Julian and I, along with the IT team and exec board, we have weekly meetings, and we always prioritize that meeting and make sure that we can have any updates or questions go on during that meeting. So yeah, we're just going to uphold that standard of having meetings and updates frequently, whether it be online, through text, through video calls. Yeah, and hopefully at one point we may be able to meet around Sty and have a socially distant meeting, and that would be really nice, but obviously safety is our priority, and that's something we'll look for in the future.
Yeah. And just to briefly add on to that, another aspect of that question relates to clubs and student activities, which the SU helps support. And one of the things that we were really worried about this year, and it's one of the reasons we spent all summer working on STY activities, is that, without access to morning announcements, posters, word of mouth, all of these other, things, clubs will have a hard time advertising and promoting new members and organizing meetings and holding meetings. And so we're working as we speak to organize a club hub fair that all clubs can present at. We've already renovated STY activities, and we're currently working on creating a post feature that allows clubs, to sort of put posters up on a virtual wall, so that they can, advertise their interest meetings and make them accessible to students. We also want to do virtual morning announcements so that we can replicate, the concept where sports teams, clubs can, give short, catchy announcements about activities coming up, and also use these virtual morning announcements as a way for, students to stay informed and to be updated on everything. So, one of our biggest challenges this year, which we're really trying to confront head on, is making sure that we can support the operations and the communications of all of the activities at Stuyvesant that really make our school great and make our community great.
So the next question kind of builds on what we talked about for clubs and programs. What impact has COVID-19 had on the budgets for various school clubs and programs? And you used to describe a little about how the club hub fair will operate this year.
Yeah, I can jump in about the budget, and Shivali can explain a little bit about the club pub fair. So the SU, we haven't actually been able to access the full numbers of our budget since March, since the spring. The DOE actually shut down all schools' budgets in the spring, and they've only just started to open them up again, due to the budget cuts that the city was facing. The student union's budget has not been impacted by any of this. We still have our same budget from last year. We were super lucky to be able to have had the same performances happen right before COVID struck. If the same performances had been 1 week later, we wouldn't have been able to have that amazing tradition. But the same performances are also our main revenue stream, and they're where we get funding to fund clubs and activities. And so we're really fortunate to have that money in our budget so that this year we can still hold financial allocations for clubs. We can still make sure that they get funding. And we can also place a focus on them getting funding for what they need. Clubs in the past might have wanted, physical supplies or money to go to a trip, like debate, for example, or Model UN. This year it's going to be a little bit different. They might be asking for different things, and we can change our rules and we can change the way we fund them to support them. And so, while, we're not probably going to have the same revenue streams that we've had this year, that we've had in past years, we're lucky that our budget has been maintained, and that, for the past, 5 to 10 SU administrations, there's been a priority on sustainably building our budget and making sure that we've saved up money for a rainy day. And now is our rainy day. Now is our time where it's good to have a cushion. It's good to have that funding. So we'll be able to support clubs. We'll be able to support student activities this year. And we've already started talking. Shivali and I met with the Alumni Association about a week ago. We've already started talking about, what is funding? What is the budget going to look like next year? And I think this has been a conversation that's really been happening around the city, because we're facing a lot of impacts of COVID right now. But the budget shortfalls and all these other effects are actually gonna linger and gonna continue to impact us, perhaps in even harder ways, a year from now. And that's especially true for the SU. And so I think it's really important to share that Shivali and I have a forward-thinking mindset, and we're making sure that decisions we make now are sustainable, and that we're already starting to plan for future years and how what's happening now will affect them. Shivali, do you want to talk a bit about the Club Pub Fair and what we're doing for that?
So our Club Pub Fair, as Julian said, it's being planned right now. So what we have decided right now is just starting Tuesday, September the 29th, we are going to be doing 5 days. With each day have I think 4 to 6 p.m. is going to be a different session based on the clubs that have a specific genre or theme. So if you go on our activities website, you'll see tags like art, hobbies, academic, volunteering. So each day will be based on that specific theme. At the beginning of the fair, each club will be able to give about a 1 or 2 minute intro to their club. We just decided to do this because we want to make sure that smaller clubs who don't necessarily have a huge name or reputation still get the ability to present to freshmen. And then after each club has given their 1 to 2 minute intro, we will be asking clubs in advance to create their own Zoom link. And we're gonna organize all those Zoom links on our website. And so after students have watched their intro, seen all their clubs that are available for that day, they're gonna go to our website, and they're gonna click on the breakout room that the club had created through that Zoom link. And it's up to the club what they want to do in that breakout room, but it's just a place to ask questions, talk about your club more, get to know the club leaders. So yeah, a big focus was that, like Julian had said earlier, we want to make sure that clubs are still getting the ability to communicate with students, especially if they're not a huge name like Model UN or Red Cross. You're still getting a time to talk about what you do. And then another thing we just want to mention, Julian talked about it a little bit earlier. Sci activities, like I said, we had like completely changed this year. We're also adding that post feature, which is essentially just going to be like a follow. And after you follow a club, you can keep up with their meetings, with their updates, any other important information that they need to advertise. So once again, just making sure that clubs are having the ability to promote themselves and get their name out there.
Okay, so for the next question, I know in your previous response, you touched a little bit on Sing, citing how it was one of the primary revenue streams for last year. So the next question kind of pertains to what Sing will look like this year and the logistics surrounding the implementation of, whatever plans you might have for it.
Yeah, so Sing is such a big part of what makes Stuy, and it's an event that I think most students probably look forward to every year. As always, safety is our number one priority. So if that means that by March we're not able to safely execute Sing in the normal way we would execute it, we're definitely looking and thinking about alternative ways. Currently, between me and Julian, we don't think it's necessarily fair to come up with a whole plan based on just our opinions. So we plan on talking with previous Sing directors and people that know a lot more about Sing than Julian and I would, just to see what they think and what their plans would be. Me and Julian don't want to come up with a plan and then have every Sing director hate it. So yeah, right now our plan is just to preserve this tradition, like obviously because it is a huge part of Stuy, but also recognize the times and the situation. So yeah, we will keep you guys updated on the Sing, but for now, we're just gonna keep our hopes up.
So the next question, it's a little more general. What new policies do you hope to implement in light of remote and blended learning? And additionally, because of their two different learning styles, how do you plan on keeping students and teachers unified during this time?
Yeah, Julian.
So much to talk about with this one. So I can first start with some policies, and we mentioned these a lot in our platform, but there's a lot of stuff that we want to work on, and specifically remote learning related, there's a lot of academic policies that we're interested in. The main one that I think that comes to a lot of people's attention is homework policy, and this was a really big issue last year. Any students from last year will know that there were issues with teachers assigning too much work and it being hard to manage, and the SU played a big role in making sure that there was a clear line of communication between students and teachers and the APs, and that's something we want to continue this year. We have to acknowledge with the new, instructional setup this year, because we have our schedule the way it is, we're losing about 35% of the instructional time that we would normally have. So we have less time with our teachers, but we also have a shorter school day. And we're also, losing the time, or we're gaining the time that we would normally spend in our commute. And so things have shifted a lot this year. It's likely that there's going to have to be, more self-teaching and more independent learning and more students doing, more work at home. And that's just a side effect of the pandemic. That's not a side effect of any policies within the school. That's not a cause of any policies. It's just, the state of where we are. But we also know that maintaining mental health, making sure that students are sane and that they have time to rest and relax and time to deal with the incredible gravity of everything going on around us, that's really important. And that should always come first. Even when students are falling behind perhaps in instructional time, we need to make sure we're supporting them in other ways. And so we want to make sure that we have good caps on the amount of homework. The homework policy is pretty much staying the same from last year. It's just extending to the whole 2-day schedule that we now have. But we are committed. We met with Principal Yu earlier today. We're committed to meeting with him every 2 weeks and making sure that we can check in. How does this change throughout the school year? What's going to happen, for example, in AP season? Our AP test is going to come back in their full extent, and if so, how stressful is that going to be for students? How can we support students? Specifically thinking about seniors, maybe in October we're going to need to talk with Principal Yu and with teachers about how can we support seniors as they go through the college process in a more difficult time than ever. So those are some ways we're thinking about the homework policy. We're also thinking about a bunch of other policies. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I know there's a lot of other topics, but we're looking at the testing policy. We want to, it's been a priority of ours to shift towards more projects, more, project-based learning. less, you have to complete this online assignment that has like 2 different sign-in mechanisms and close down your browser, and you'll probably not be able to access it the first time around, and you'll also have to have your Zoom camera on, and you have to do it in 50 minutes, and if you don't, then you lose 100% of your grade. Like, we don't want that to happen. We want it to be as easy and accommodating for students, and we want to take into account that not all students have the same technical capabilities. And part of this is also making sure that, teachers aren't really going to get to know students in the way they typically have. So having more projects, having more essays, that's a way for students to express their creativity and for teachers to get to know their students better. So it's a win-win on all sides. And I think the administration has really showed that they agree with this, with their new grading policy that they've released. And Principal Yu is placing an emphasis on, homework and participation grades. He's also announced a new policy regarding late work that will allow basically for students to submit. Students will not, so I'm not very good at explaining this, but I'll explain it this way. Say you submit an assignment 5 days late, and your teacher has a policy that every day they deduct 5 points. Your assignment deserved an 100, but you're actually going to get a 75 on it because you submitted it late. This year, because of everything students are going through, Principal Yu and the administration really understood that a late work policy like that really isn't effective, and it really hurts students. Why are students, if a student's quality of work is the same quality that we're expecting and that teachers want, but they submit it 5 days late, why are they getting such a lower grade? How can we support student achievement, but let students, work through the difficult scenarios, difficult times they're in? And a solution to that is moving the lateness deduction points away from being deducted from assignments and into their own separate grading category. So, there'll be more information distributed about this soon, but the basic plan is that if a student submits his assignment late, the point deduction doesn't come from the assignment, but it comes from a new category that a lot of teachers have relating to preparation, attendance, and that category can't exceed 15% of a student's grade. And so it means that, if a student is going through a tough time at home and they submit assignments late, they're not going to get penalized for that. And I think we think that's really important. Finally, before I switch over to Shivali, I just want to mention 2 more things. One, we really care about live instruction, and we really care about students turning their cameras on. It's a really difficult situation here. Ideally, it should be based on the comfort level of the student and how comfortable the student feels, and whether they, students coming from different homes, different backgrounds, some students don't even have webcams, don't even have cameras. On the town halls that Shivali and I helped facilitate 2 days ago, we actually got a lot of responses from students saying, like, I don't have a webcam, what can I do? And we're really glad that the administration has taken this into account and that they're choosing to create a system in which there's an expectation for cameras to be turned on, but if it's not possible, something can be worked out. And finally, the last thing, and this is about like a structural change, a change to our attitude, has to do with like the academic integrity policy. Not just the academic honesty policy, but it's now the academic integrity policy. And it's about the framework through which we approach student decisions. And this is something we're really glad that Principal Yu is pursuing. But there's always been a rift in student-teacher relationships at Stuyvesant. We've all experienced it. And there's that lack of ability to communicate honestly and transparently with your teacher. And that's more important than ever now. That's more important than ever when, you might not be able to join a Zoom call for a personal reason. And you need to let your teacher know, but you're afraid that your teacher will deduct points from your grade, or you're afraid your teacher won't listen, or you just don't feel comfortable sharing that. So building student-teacher relationships is more important than ever. And so having a mindset of enforcement, a mindset of point deduction, a mindset where teachers are worried about students cheating, that's not how we want it to work. We don't want to have an academic honesty policy. And Principal Yu has changed it to an academic integrity policy. And the perspective shift with that is looking for the best in students, assuming the best in students, and being there to support them. Integrity is something that we assume all students have. Students care about their reputation. Students don't want to plagiarize. Students don't want to cut back any of that. All of these things are caused by external factors, a lot of which are going to be exacerbated in this pandemic. And so we want to approach this from a perspective of understanding, a perspective of knowing where students are coming from and supporting them. And that framework shift, I think, is emblematic of a lot of the policies that we want to push for. It's really about supporting students and understanding that you may not be able to do the same level of workload, the same level of commitment that you've done in past years, but that shouldn't be taken out on you. That shouldn't affect your grade. That's a product of the times we're in, and we need to adjust the way we think about things and the way our policies work to change that. Anyways, I've been talking for a very long time, and I think Shivali can sort of talk about more things we're working on to address, student and teacher unity.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. So like Julian was saying, I think a big part and a big discrepancy between students and teachers is this like feeling of trust. And so I echo everything Julian just said. But another thing I want to mention is that in our town hall on Wednesday, which you all were at, throughout the 4 town halls, one thing that we both noticed was that communication kept coming up. So between a student and a teacher, Principal U and all of us, we acknowledge the fact that as students, we hope that we can feel comfortable enough to communicate with our teacher and tell them what's going on in our lives. So currently the Zoom policy is that cameras are highly, I don't think they ever use the word required, but they are pretty much required by teachers. But from a student's perspective, we hope that you all are able to communicate with your teachers and let them know things that are going on if you are unable to get your Zoom camera on at that time. So Principal U is completely aware of this and of supporting this idea that if you have something going on, communicate with your teacher, and you should not be penalized or negatively affected by that personal situation. And then in terms of unification, Julian and I will continue to hold the SU standard of sending out weekly conversations, using morning announcements to get any information across to the student body, using weekly schedule emails to get any information out to the students. And finally, we just want to emphasize that I know it can sometimes feel like policies are policies, and as a student union, we say a lot of things and you may not feel like they're ever accomplished, but one thing that we do want to support and thank Principal U for doing is emphasizing that we need a unified platform. And when we were on our call with Principal U today, we talked about how Google Classroom is much more effective than having 50 different platforms from all your teachers and keeping track of each part of where should I get, I know last year for me, I had to memorize where each teacher was posting their homework, and it was just a really big burden. So this year we are really happy that Principal U has kind of enforced that every teacher has a common platform with Google Classroom. So yes, that was a long answer to that question, but yeah.
Okay, so the next question kind of deals with more specific policies that you guys have. So one of them is regarding the kind of implicit bias training that you have talked about. What is the implementation of that going to look like for Stuyvesant club leaders and Stuyvesant organizations as a whole?
Mm-hmm. So this is a part of our, in general, the equity and inclusivity aspect of our platform. That's something that we want to maintain. And through the work that we do in the DOE, with various leaders in the DOE, we work with someone called a student voice manager. We work with people in the communications department, and we're constantly working with people from the Office of Equity and Access, the Office of Safety and Youth Development. So Shivali and I are familiar with a lot of restorative justice work, a lot of equity work, and one of the things that we really think can be valuable for students is implicit bias training. And this is not, we don't want to be limited with this, and we struggled with incorporating this in our plan because this is part of a general framework, and we don't want to limit it to, we will do X number of implicit bias trainings for X number of students, and that will solve everything. Because one, it won't solve everything, and two, that's just not realistic. We know the DOE is already stressed for resources this year, but we've already had conversations with some of our contacts about how can we bring in implicit bias trainings, and how can we work from this approach that we have 3,400 students. It's hard to get them all on the same page, but how can we work from the perspective of, taking leaders within certain communities, be it different clubs, different organizations, different groups of students. How can we help them disseminate that? And it's part of our philosophy as leaders of the student union, and why we're upholding diversity, which we talked about earlier. It's part of our responsibility to spread that to all the students who we interact with. But just getting back to your original question, the goal is that we can incorporate discussions about equity at every aspect of the Stuyvesant experience. So there's a lot of different ways to pursue that. One of the ways to pursue that is through advocating for culturally responsive curriculum, which is something that we're doing and has been done. That's the level that's within the school. There's also a level, that's working with, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee that Ms. Brandon is creating and supporting their work, going to the talk circles around race, making like, if we grow those conversations, we make sure those are open to all students. Those are natural and really great environments and ecosystems for these conversations to happen. And so we want to support those as well. There's also working with clubs. And we've spoken briefly with the Spirit on BSL. We didn't really have a chance to implement this year because of the tight timeline we're on about, is there any features we can build into STA activities, into the club chartering process, maybe a question that the club answers, or information that is shared with clubs that allow them to learn more about this and educate themselves and educate their club members. So we're thinking about this from a lot of different perspectives. And I know that can sound like a lot of empty rhetoric, and that can sound like we don't have a specific plan for this. But I think it's worth mentioning that Shivali and I really do care about equity. We're bringing it to everything that we're doing. And we're also, part of organizations like Students and Educators for Equity, where part of our responsibility as part of those organizations is to develop like specific plans for our school for the year. Part of our work on the school leadership team, for example, which is the group of a school leadership team. All schools have these. It's a group of teachers, administrators, students, and the principal. And they all meet together around once a month and discuss things. And it became especially important as we entered remote learning. But one of the primary roles of the school leadership team that actually most people aren't familiar with, but that's really important, is in developing what's called the CEP goals. The CEP stands for the Comprehensive Education Plan. And it's basically a fancy terminology for what are the goals that the school has for improving over the next year. And one of the most meaningful ways that we can affect policy is by working through the school leadership team, which we represent students on, to determine what those goals are. And a lot of schools make those goals around metrics, increasing their graduation rate, decreasing their suspension rate. The metrics aren't really something that is as important at STI, and so instead a lot of these goals are intangible. Last year, one of the goals on the comprehensive education plan was related to like a specific targeted group of students that the administration had basically narrowed down. They looked at, where can we find inequity, most in our school, and they looked at test grades and they broke it down by like subdividers of race and ethnicity, and they found that South Asian male students are the students who need the most support and extra assistance within our school. And so they did a lot of things to do that, but part of putting that in the comprehensive education plan allowed us to track, those grades, track the graduation rates. The administration implemented like parent town halls out in Queens to engage parent communities out there. So like through that one plan that we worked on at SLT, a lot of things happened, and that's another area where we can pursue equity. Yeah, I think those are a lot of just different ways that we're thinking of pursuing this. Shivali, do you want to add on or help condense some of what I've said?
No, I agree with everything Julian said, and like you mentioned before, we're going to make it a priority to also have these like difficult discussions. We've talked with our executive council about ways that we can like immediately implement that going straight into the year, because things like implicit bias training are a little bit difficult, but we're going to hold all our clubs to the same standard, and we're discussing this right now, having a code of conduct between clubs and making sure that they are acting in a way, and if any member reports them for something, that they will take immediate action. And that's another thing that we are standing by and holding holding to a standard, I guess. And so, like Julie mentioned, we will be going to all the educational movie screenings, all the town halls, all the race tables. So yeah, just using me and Julian, we are going to be the standard, and we are going to show students that we are also committed to doing this, and just make that an expectation and hope that the rest of the student body is also looking to do the same as us.
So in regards to like the equity kind of value, we wanted to ask, in your policies, you said you wanted to recruit students for the SLT committees. How do you plan on doing that? And for kind of regarding SU and caucus integration, what will improved SU and caucus integration look like and provide for the student body?
These are two amazing things, and actually what draws them together is actually what makes them similar to each other, which they may not seem similar at first, is that they're two things that we should have done a long time ago. There are these opportunities for more student engagement, more communication that have been available to us for a long time and that we're really excited to take advantage of now. In terms of SLT subcommittees, the way the SLT works is there's 17 representatives on the SLT. They're Shivali, myself, and our SLT representative for the student union, who is Sarai Pridgen. And there's also, parent, teacher, administration representatives. So it's a pretty limited group. And one of our main goals with that, by the way, is that those meetings have been somewhat closed to outside members of the school. They've been streamed on YouTube, but in a normal meeting, outside members of the school can come and they can speak at the actual SLT meeting. And we complained about this a lot last year because Zoom webinar technology was there, it was available. We don't know why it wasn't taken advantage of, and we're really going to push for that this year because we want to make sure these meetings are open for everyone to participate. But specifically relating to your question about subcommittees, one of the amazing things about the SLT is that we fracture into subcommittees that meet more frequently to discuss certain policies. For example, we had a subcommittee on school reopening. And Shivali is actually the perfect example of this, because Shivali was not the SLT representative last year. She was a delegate of external affairs. And she got to participate on the school reopening subcommittee because it's open to all students. We also had a student who's currently another rising junior, Krish, who's not even a part of the student union, who was able to sit on the subcommittee as well. And this year, we want to make sure that, as the SLT forms these subcommittees, we really make them accessible to students. So there's a lot of ways to do this, but the main concept is if an SLT subcommittee is formed, we send out a form to students. They can sign up to be a part of it. And one of the things that we always complain about, or I always complain about, this is a big pet peeve of mine. I really care about student voice, and the SLT only has 3 student representatives out of the 17 members, which really doesn't make sense if you think about it. Students make up 3,400 people in this school. They're the ones who education actually concerns. They should be the ones having the bigger input on things, and they don't. And one of the things I'm really excited about is the opportunity to bring in more students and to include more student voice. That can only benefit us. That can only, raise more student concerns, increase student advocacy. And so that's just a win-win situation that we just haven't taken advantage of before, that we're really excited to take advantage of now. And beyond that, beyond just the SLT subcommittees, which are limited, there's not always a lot of them, and it's not something that all students can get involved in. We've been toying with this idea of having students sort of become SLT members of the student union in a way, which basically means they would be working with us on developing policy proposals and working on, they would be attending these SLT meetings too. They wouldn't be able to participate in them in the same way as, Shivali, myself, and Sarai can. But they would still be able to work with us on policies and on, getting student feedback, incorporating that. And this has been done before. It's something that wasn't done last year. But the year before, one of the big student issues that's always a topic at SLT is PSAL freeze, and the concept that, students who are in a PSAL sport should be able to have a gym free. And it's a very contentious issue. But in past years, we've been able to include, students who, aren't members of the SU in that discussion. So they can help us, build that policy, leaders from, in this case, different, sports, coming to work with us. And we want that to still apply now. If there's a policy that's being worked on, we want to directly reach out to students to include them in that discussion. I forget the second question, but I'm sure Shivali will do an amazing job of answering it. Oh, SU and caucus relations, yes.
Yeah, so in terms of SU and caucus relationships, as Julian mentioned, it's something that we, last year, Vishwa and Julian had made it a priority, but we just plan on continuing that and making it really inclusive, as one of our main themes of this year is going to be. We plan on joining, so caucus have cabinet meetings similar to the SU. So they also have department meetings and in general just meetings pretty often. So Julian and I hope to along with our executive council, join those meetings pretty frequently and understand the things that are going on between their events and their general situations and problems, and help in any way we can, but also just staying aware and on top of the things that they're doing. And in the virtual world, we'll try to get on calls with whoever the future caucus presidents will be, and also host projects. A lot of things that we did last year required collaboration, and they probably will continue to require collaboration. And also another exciting thing that Julian and I were able to do this year, while we were restructuring our executive council, we decided to create a new position on the exec board, which is called our Chief Relations Officer, who is Nev this year. And Nev's main role this year is going to be like staying on top of the relationship and the things that are going on between the SU and the caucus. So so we do have cabinet meetings. We do devote time for caucuses to update us, but in between cabinet meetings or general meetings, Nev will be the person that will kind of get that communication solidified and frequent.
I hate to shout out like a past debate, but there was this moment, I think one of the debates over the past few days. It was a really cathartic moment, but I forget who said this, but someone basically said, what is wrong with all of this? Why can't the SU and caucuses work together? What is wrong with that relationship? Why can't caucuses work on policy change? Why can't caucuses work with the SU on things? And that like summarized the mentality that I think Shivali and I have been thinking about. Like what has happened down the line to drive these two parts of the SU who should be working so closely together, so far apart? And this is a consistent theme, but it's the more students we can engage, the closer we can work together, the better we'll be. And we had a taste of this last year, and it's part of what Vishwa and I were working on that we really want to continue. When the physics fiasco happened and when those changes happened, we had a really close collaboration with the junior caucus, meeting with the administration, making sure juniors current seniors, weren't too impacted by that, making sure they got refunds, making sure that we could have meetings with the administration to not just talk about that year, but to also talk about this year, where current juniors are going to have to go through a regular physics course. And that department has a lot of things that need to be worked out. So that was an example of an amazing collaboration between the SU and caucus that we want to normalize, and we want that to become something that's really regular. I have fantasies about this. This is my hold with me here. Sunday brunches between SU and caucus, and we sit down and we have a meal over Zoom and we talk about things. These are what I think about in my free time. But I have all of these ideas about ways that we can that we can collaborate more with caucuses, and that we can take advantage of the fact that we have more elected student representatives who are really committed and share that commitment with them. So it's a really big priority for Shivali and I.
Okay, so just very quickly, there weren't a lot of audience questions, but there was one, and someone asked, how is the SU planning on helping new SU members, such as freshmen, adjust themselves into the system and become a part of the SU in this situation without meeting up? So that was an audience question.
Shivali, you want to take that first? This is a great question.
Yeah, I think that everyone's going to have a difficult time adjusting this year, and it's definitely a priority for both of us to make sure that students are well adjusted and well accustomed to the things that we're going to be doing. So I think if needed, we haven't gone through our members and director applications yet, but I think when the time comes, we'll definitely be hosting meetings, getting to know individual freshmen, making sure that even if they're a caucus, a general member, a director, we go through the whole expectations and mission for this year, and make it clear that we're here for them, we're open for them, and making sure that we're an open resource and they know that they can contact us or an executive council at any time.
Yeah. One of the things we emphasize in our applications, I think what you can see now actually, is that you don't need prior experience, you don't need prior skills to apply to be a member of the SU, to be a director. We will teach you what you need to know. In fact, it's almost a benefit for you to come in with that fresh perspective, to come in with the perspective of not being part of the SU before, maybe not even being part of a student government before, and bringing that fresh set of eyes to things. And that's a big priority for us. We really emphasized that last year. We had a lot of freshman directors. Shivali is an example of that. I'm an example of that. We both came into the SU in our freshman year, both through the External Affairs Department. And we received amazing mentorship from older members of the SU who taught us everything that we know now, and who really made sure that we had a voice in the SU and we could participate. And that's something that we're really committed to, making sure that there's equal membership of the SU from freshmen to seniors, and making sure that members get the support and the tools that they need to really participate.
Actually, hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I have obviously I've been watching the past 3 debates these past 3 years. I know you two have as well for the most part. And I think the common theme that has come up between all of the caucuses really is how are they going to maintain school spirit and students like what's it? I don't know how to phrase it, like student activism, like within the school community. And although like the caucuses are focused on their individual like grades, and I know like the junior caucus is mainly focused on like game nights and all that, and to rise the sophomore caucus is a lot focused on like movie nights and stuff. What are you guys going to be doing in order to uphold that student community and school spirit?
Shivali, you want to take that first?
Yeah, I can take it. So like we said, I think caucuses play a big role in like in terms of spirit and like, you know, grade-wide assemblies and events. So we will definitely be supporting caucuses through that process. But another thing that we are planning on doing, and you can see more about in our plan, is making sure that we kind of convert a lot of online events and things that students look forward to throughout the year and making them in a virtual form. So just ideas and random things that we have planned for this year. Spirit Week and Spirit Days are super big, and we did this at the end of last year, but we hope that students sometime will be able to send in pictures and we can share them with the rest of the school and have competitions and contests and like have prizes for people who, you know, have the best spirit look or the best Halloween costume. In addition, last year sophomore caucus had a bunch of great ideas and a bunch of great events that we think we could make virtual this year: trivia nights, movie nights, and also last year our external affairs department, which I was a part of, like Julian mentioned, had a bunch of speaker series and guest speakers throughout the year, which we are planning on working on right now. We have two of our members working to get ACLU speakers, which is super exciting, and we're really looking forward to that. And then finally, our career fair, well, not finally, just one of the things I'm going to mention, but career fair, we're working with Parents Association, Alumni Association. Oh, and one of the really exciting things about the career fair this year is that because it's virtual and because we have an online platform, we're able to get people from across the country, across the world to participate. So last year it was super exciting. We did it virtually last year too, but because it was so last minute, we weren't really able to expand like our horizons, I guess. So we can get people from Silicon Valley or super successful people from across the country and not really limit ourselves to New York, which I'm really looking forward to. Super excited about. Julian?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of ideas for Spirit Days. I think this ties back to the SU caucus collaboration. Caucuses are really good at doing this. They're really in touch with their grade, and they're really able to make events that are really grade specific, and we want to support them with that. But we also have a plethora of ideas for events that we want to do throughout the year. A lot of it is converting things that have happened, you know, in person before to a virtual setting. So as Shivali mentioned, like Spirit Week, Stuyvesant, we do a costume contest that can be online. Games and activities after school, movie nights, those can all happen online, and they have happened online last year. But there's also new ideas. Like we've actually hosted a lot of virtual concerts. There's been a lot of virtual concerts in general. That's been an amazing opportunity for students to, you know, share their talents and have other students watch. We've also talked to the Big Sibs. They hosted an amazing sort of trivia game day for the incoming freshmen over the summer. And they also hosted a virtual concert there too. So we want to take some of those ideas and continue to make them regular. There's so many different avenues of possibility. And part of this will be as we recruit new directors and new members, we want to get new ideas for what we can do to engage students. We can do a lot more school spirit engagement online because it's faster to plan, it's easier to coordinate, and students are already engaging through social media platforms, through their email. So we can just take advantage of those communication platforms that have already been set up. We've also started thinking briefly about what could in-person events look like. It's very premature of us, and we're still, you know, safety is the number one priority. We don't want to, you know, plan to do any events that would, you know, not be safe for students. But we're starting to think ahead about, you know, when can we start resuming these events in person that students really like. And we want to do that as soon as possible, obviously, you know, Sing being the prime example of that. Yeah, but we want to make sure we're collaborating with caucuses and hosting our own events, because school spirit is more important than it ever has been this year.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any more questions, Matthew?
No, I don't think we have any more. So thank you to those who came to the Student Union Town Hall today. Thank you to Julian and Shivali for answering all these questions. And yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you to Matthew and Steffi, our great moderators. Steffi unfortunately had to leave a bit early, but nonetheless she did a great job. Matthew as well. Yeah, as Matthew just said, thank you so much to Julian and Shivali and to anyone who's here. As a reminder, we're posting this on YouTube, and election day for the caucuses, minus freshmen, will be held next Thursday, the 24th. So if you are sophomore, junior, senior, please remember to vote. That's super important. Yeah, so thank you all so much for coming, and Julian Shivali, once again, you guys did a great job, and we look forward to our upcoming school year with you guys as our leaders.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much, Ava and Matthew and Steffi, who's not here. I just want to reiterate before we go that I know that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of you in attendance right now, and we're really grateful for you having come. If you have any questions, please, you still have time to ask them. But for anyone watching online, and for all of you, like, we are super accessible. We want to be super accessible. Check out our website, check out Sty Activities, email us. We want to have conversations with you. We want to answer your questions. So even if you weren't able to attend today, please reach out to us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Ava, Matthew. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to this year a lot.
Yeah, okay. So I think that's going to be it for this meeting. So make sure to contact them if you have any questions, and have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.